Schools are reopening in Wuhan and life seems to be going back to normal after lockdown. But one resident saw some alarming signs. China's state-run media launched another attack on U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, the latest from a TV documentary, but many Chinese netizens were surprised and objected to the language used. A Chinese state-owned company was recently added to the U.S. sanction list for building islands in the South China Sea. A major player in China's Belt and Road Initiative, China Communications has left a trail of corruption and other controversies across the globe. And a new report from an international human rights organization sheds light on the Chinese regime's special method of disappearing people. It estimates 20 people disappear on average in China every day, and the number could be higher. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. While the CCP virus cases are flaring up around the world, in China's original epicenter, Wuhan, life is seemingly returning to normal. But one resident told us about some alarming signs. NTD's Juliet Song has more on that.
Over 1 million students are returning to schools in Wuhan. And just about 2 weeks ago, a local water park held a massive pool party. Thousands attended, people were packed in the pool, and no one seemed to wear any masks. In the city where the pandemic first started, life seems to be going back to normal, but many question whether the virus has really vanished. One local told us virus cases are still cropping up around the world. How come cases in Wuhan are just over like that? This must be a guise for political reasons. And some signs made her wonder if the virus is making a comeback. She says she is closely monitored by authorities. To protect her identity, we gave her a pseudonym, Wang Yan. Wang saw hundreds of people lining up outside two major hospitals, Tongji and Union. Patients were there to visit the fever outpatient clinics. CCP virus symptoms include fever. In China, patients who have fever have to see the fever outpatient department first. From there, the doctors will check if they're infected with the virus. But Wang also suspects that some hospitals may not dare to diagnose virus cases. What adds to her suspicion is a social media post from a local doctor. The doctor saw a woman who had virus symptoms, including a cough, chest pain, and hazy lung opacities. The doctor thinks the woman could be infected with viral pneumonia or the CCP virus. The woman also went to 2 other hospitals for a checkup. Although she has virus symptoms, the hospitals did not put the virus or viral pneumonia as a possible cause on the report. If they do that, the patient has to do tests to see if she's infected. Both hospitals took no further action on the patient. In Wuhan, Huanan Seafood Market is where some of the first virus cases were reported. But a mile away lies a grocery market. Wang said the grocery market was open after the lockdown was lifted, but was suddenly shut down 4 days ago. In the meantime, some neighborhoods are seeing the return of control measures used in the lockdown. Wang said in some residential areas northeast of Wuhan, people have to wear a mask and have their temperature checked before they enter or exit. Julia Song, NTD News.
Now we turn to another story from Wuhan. Chinese citizen reporter Zhang Zhan took drastic measures to stand up for human rights, even while inside a detention center. Presented with few options, she began a hunger strike. Now, reports say she's very weak. Her story began months ago when she was arrested in Wuhan. Zhang worked in Shanghai as a human rights lawyer. That was before she went to Wuhan in February to cover the virus outbreak at its epicenter and discover the true situation there. She visited hospital emergency rooms and fever clinics for the chance to interview patients. She also reached out to railway station passengers and even factory workers to get the inside details about reportedly subpar working conditions. All of her interviews were posted on social media. But during this time, Chinese police harassed her on multiple occasions. It all came to a head in mid-May. Since then, she's been detained by police, accused of what officials call stirring up trouble. Currently, she's detained inside Pudong New Area Detention Center located in Shanghai City. Insiders say her case has recently been sent for review and prosecution. Mr. Liu, a Wuhan resident, was also imprisoned once due to his fight against the communist regime. He explained that hunger strikes are used to fight for basic human rights.
Most dissidents fight for their basic human rights with hunger strikes. Just as when I was in prison, I went on a hunger strike to fight for the right to read and the right to see my family and friends. Most political prisoners receive intense attention from the international world at the beginning, so the Chinese authorities would not let any news leak out. They never follow legal procedures, and the dissidents aren't allowed to hire lawyers to defend themselves.
Shanghai resident Mr. Hu described the hunger strike as a noble protest against injustice.
Please spread the news of our hunger strike online and let more people know the truth. She is a brave lady who yearns for freedom and a bright future. She is a very good person. Hunger strikes are a kind of protest against the Chinese Communist Party, a solemn protest against judicial injustice.
In September 2019, Zhang was arrested for holding an umbrella painted with the words "End Socialism, Terminate the Communist Party." She also supported Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement. She was detained for 2 months and went on 2 hunger strikes. Some relatives of virus patients who died in Wuhan earlier this year are suing authorities. To prevent them from doing so, the Chinese Communist Party is trying to damage the reputation of their lawyer.
Yang Jianqing is one of the lawyers assisting relatives of the CCP virus patients in Wuhan to sue the authorities. Now he lives in the U.S. His clients in Wuhan believe their loved ones who died from the virus could have been able to survive. That's if they knew about the outbreak earlier. They are suing the communist regime for its cover-up of the epidemic. Yang told us through a netizen he got to know that the authorities were trying to ruin his reputation. Yang provided legal assistance to Zhang Hai, the first family member of a virus victim in China, to sue the Wuhan municipal authorities. Yang didn't charge Zhang any fees, but a netizen said that someone impersonating his client was spreading lies, saying that Yang had charged a very high fee.
A netizen said that the person who claimed himself to be Zhang Hai said to the netizen that I had charged him 100,000 yuan in legal fees and promised to win the lawsuit. He said that now he can't find me, so he's looking for me everywhere. The netizen gave me a screenshot of the person claiming to be Zhang Hai. I saw it was an imposter.
Lawyer Yang told Zhang that someone had impersonated him to spread lies. Zhang was also very angry. He was worried that the imposter did other things in his name, so he wrote a statement saying that Yang had helped him without any compensation. Zhang believes this was a dirty trick organized by Wuhan authorities to make family members of virus victims give up their fight.
They impersonated me to slander Mr. Yang. They just wanted to achieve one goal, to let people think he was a liar and charge a high fee. By doing this, the family members of other virus victims will give up their fight. Their behavior is despicable.
Yang revealed that the authorities also portrayed him as a, quote, foreign anti-China force.
The victims' family members only have WeChat. Our WeChat contact was monitored. After my consultation, they were all threatened by police, who visited or called them. Also, they said that I was an overseas anti-China activist who encouraged the victims' families to make trouble. Police asked them not to be fooled.
Yang said the threats by the authorities and their attacks on him caused many people who had asked him for legal help to give up. Reporting by Xiong Bin, NTD News.
A Chinese state-owned company, China Communications, was recently added to the U.S. sanctions list for helping the Chinese military build an island in the South China Sea. But the company is also a major player in China's Belt and Road Initiative, leaving a trail of corruption and other controversies in its wake.
This is Sri Lanka's Colombo port. Here, a unit of China's state-owned construction giant, China Communications Constructions, is building a massive port city project for the South Asian country.
We see this as a project that will give new life to the country's economy.
But to fund the project, the country borrowed over $1 billion from China, which deepened Sri Lanka's already growing debt crisis. This after the Sri Lanka authorities borrowed hundreds of millions of Chinese money for another project at the port town Hambantota. To ease the debt, the country had to hand over a controlling 70% stake of the strategically important port to China and rented the port to China for 99 years. Despite government-sponsored studies showing the projects wouldn't be profitable, local authorities push it through anyway. These port city projects are part of the Chinese regime's ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, where the regime lends money to underdeveloped nations for building infrastructure. Such projects were often later commissioned to Chinese state-owned companies. The case of Sri Lanka is often cited by analysts and Western officials to criticize China's Belt and Road project for saddling countries with debt and fueling corruption. A New York Times investigation in 2018 shows that before getting the deal, the Chinese company and local Chinese diplomats had gone out of their way to support and fund the then Sri Lanka president's election campaign. But Sri Lanka is hardly alone.
We're now operating in more than 100 countries and regions outside China. 70% of our overseas projects are based in Belt and Road regions.
China Communications is the largest Belt and Road contractor. It recently made onto the U.S. sanction list for helping the Chinese military build artificial islands in the South China Sea. It was singled out by the State Department for leaving a trail of corruption, predatory financing, environmental destruction, and other abuses across the world. State Department official David Stilwell recently likened China Communications and others to modern-day equivalent of the East India Company, the trade giant used by Britain to expand its colonization.
These state-owned enterprises are PRC instruments of abuse, and we should highlight their improper behavior. In all of our societies, citizens deserve to know the differences between commercial enterprises and instruments of foreign state power.
For instance, in the East Africa country of Kenya, China Communications was accused of mistreating local railway workers. In 2018, staff members of the company were arrested for stealing some 1/3 of the daily earnings of the railway's ticket sales and allegedly bribing investigators. Similar cases of corruption were also found in the Philippines, Malaysia, Bangladesh, and Thailand. And in Australia, a construction company owned by China Communications was found supplying lead-tinted water to a children's hospital it built and using asbestos-filled panels. Companies added to the U.S. entity list are no longer able to buy U.S.-made products. They also have a reputation and investment cost to the companies, since investors, trading partners, and even banks can be scared away. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
Now we take a look at the special method of the Chinese Communist Party to make people disappear. The Australian government announced an update earlier this week about Australian Chinese TV anchor Chen Lei. According to officials, she's under what's called residential surveillance at a designated location in China. Chen works as a host for TV broadcaster China Global Television Network, or CGTN. It's the English language channel for CCTV, one of the Chinese Communist Party's most well-known media mouthpieces. Chen's detention at once again attracted international attention to China's so-called residential surveillance practices. Based on international human rights organization Safeguard Defender's latest report, on average every day this year, some 20 people will be disappeared in China by the state under this system. China legalized its residential surveillance at a designated location practice back in 2012. The report states that since then, police have used it to detain some 30,000 people. Once earmarked for the practice, victims are taken to a secret location. They are then isolated from the outside world for up to half a year. They're given no access to lawyers, friends, or family, and there's no policing oversight. Torture is reportedly commonplace, including beatings, sleep deprivation, threats, and other abuse. Compiling data from Chinese court verdicts posted to the Supreme Court database, Safeguard Defenders estimated that at least 28,000 to 29,000 people have been subjected to residential surveillance. But because China only publishes data for cases where a verdict is given, the real number could be significantly higher. Hong Kong media tycoon and longtime China critic Jimmy Lai was found not guilty of criminal intimidation on Thursday. The pro-democracy activist was arrested last month under Beijing's controversial national security law.
A Hong Kong court declared media tycoon and pro-democracy activist Jimmy Lai not guilty of criminal intimidation on Thursday. It brings to an end one of several cases currently against him after his high-profile arrest last month under a controversial new Chinese national security law. The verdict for this case dated back to a 2017 incident and was unrelated to his recent arrest. Lai has been an outspoken critic of Beijing and had been accused of using foul language when confronting a reporter from the Oriental Daily News, a major competitor to Lai's tabloid Apple Daily. Prosecutors in the case said Lai had intimidated the Oriental Daily reporter. However, his lawyers argued that Lai had been followed by reporters for 3 years, and his comments were not intended to harm the reporter, but only to express his exasperation. After his August arrest, around 200 police officers searched offices of the Apple Daily newspaper. Lai is also facing separate court cases for illegal assembly relating to anti-government protests last year.
Earlier this week, Chinese state-run media launched another attack at U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Let's take a look. Beijing TV documentary did a program called Unveiling the Slave to Three Families, Pompeo's Absurd Life. It referred to 3 positions held by Pompeo in his political career: Member of Congress, Director of the CIA, and Secretary of State. It also said Pompeo did what he was told to do like a slave or a dog guarding the yard. This program surprised many Chinese netizens. One of them wrote, "The Chinese Communist Party is a slave to 3 families because it was set up with support from the Russians, weaponized with a theory from a German, and developed itself using the invasion of the Japanese." Another netizen wrote, "I don't understand. What kind of trick is this? Do they want Sino-US relations to get better or worse?" Someone responded to the question, "This is a major feature of the Chinese Communist Party. It couldn't care less." The Czech Senate Speaker met with Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen on Thursday amid threats from mainland China. During the meeting, Tsai said that Taiwan and its friends would not submit to repression, referring to Beijing's condemnation of the visit.
Our actions are telling all of our European friends, as well as our friends from across the world who carry the same beliefs. No matter if you're Taiwanese or Czech, we will not submit a repression, and we will bravely say we will participate even more actively in international affairs, contribute our skills.
China claims the democratic Taiwan as its sovereign territory, but Taiwan has been fighting against Beijing's authoritarian regime for decades. The Czech Senate Speaker declared himself to be Taiwanese in a speech at Taiwan's parliament on Tuesday. His words referenced the late U.S. President John F. Kennedy's defiance of communism in 1963, when he called himself a Berliner. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said this week that the Czech Senate Speaker would pay a heavy price for visiting Taiwan. Taiwan Parliament Speaker Yo Si-kun called Wang's remarks vulgar threats.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's vulgar threats, however, were like a cold, unwelcome winter wind that makes everyone uncomfortable.
The Czech Republic, like most countries, has no formal diplomatic ties with Taiwan. China demands that countries it deals with regard Taiwan as belonging to China. The Czech visit to Taiwan garnered support from 70 parliamentarians worldwide. In a joint statement, they asserted that the Czech Republic's second highest representative does not need China's approval to visit Taiwan. Germany's foreign minister later said that Europeans treat their international partners with respect, just as they expect the same in return. He specified that threats are not part of that. France's foreign ministry spokesperson said that relations between Europe and China must be based on dialogue and mutual respect. He added that no threat against an EU member state is acceptable and that France stands with the Czech Republic. Slovakia's president also voiced similar support, calling threats directed at an EU member and its representatives unacceptable. U.S. State Department Under Secretary Keith Krach is likely to travel to Taiwan by the end of the month for trade talks. That's according to a report by Taiwanese national news Liberty Times. According to the report, the meeting will stand as the highest level talks between the two countries since ending diplomatic relations in 1979. The trip would be part of a new U.S.-Taiwan economic and commercial dialogue. The dialogue aims to strengthen U.S.-Taiwan economic ties in a number of ways, including semiconductors, healthcare, energy, among others. According to the report, the U.S. State Department and Taiwan's foreign ministry are already negotiating details. A trip will likely come sometime this month. It follows Taiwan's decision to end restrictions on U.S. beef and pork import at the end of August. The lift in rules is expected to come into play on January 1st. Krach thanked Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen on Twitter, writing, "The move demonstrated yet again that Taiwan is one of our best and most important partners," adding he looks forward to working with the nation to advance our mutual economic interests. Now we turn to another U.S. official's message to Asia, but this time it's a warning for mainland China. Defense Secretary Mark Esper gave a warning to the Chinese regime during a keynote speech on Wednesday. It was part of an event marking the anniversary of the Japanese surrender that ended World War II. Esper alluded to China with a careful choice of words, saying, "Today, in the face of new challenges to this free and open order, we are working to build an even broader coalition of partners to protect the hard-fought gains of generations past and present, especially in the Pacific." He added,
"We share an important goal, defending the sacred principles that benefit us all: democracy, liberty, sovereignty, human rights, mutual respect, and the rule of law."
The Defense Department has turned much of its attention to the Indo-Pacific in the face of China's aggressive military presence in the area. Esper mentioned U.S. outreach efforts toward many countries in the region, and growing, deepening, and unifying this network must remain central to our collective strategy to ensure peace and prosperity for another 75 years and beyond.
We welcome every nation, especially those that have benefited most from today's international system, to join us in this effort.
He ended with a reaffirmation of the United States' commitment to the world today is the same one the U.S. made to the freedom-loving people of the world in 1941.
That we will remain ready to fight any foe and defend any friend, and that we will safeguard our values and all that we hold dear at every turn, in every place.
Adding that the U.S. will not back down, he described freedom as far too precious to do otherwise, and the sacrifice of those who came before us far too great. Fed up with being confused for Communist China amid the CCP virus pandemic, Taiwan says it will redesign its passport to give greater prominence to the island's name.
The new passport, expected to come into circulation in January, removes the large English words Republic of China. The name in Chinese characters will remain. It enlarges the word Taiwan in English. At an event in which the new passport design was unveiled to media, Taiwan Foreign Minister Joseph Wu said that new passports were needed to prevent their nationals being mistaken for Chinese citizens, especially since many countries have begun stepped-up entry checks since the pandemic began. The current Taiwanese government is officially known as Republic of China, which was established in China in 1911. It was a member of the Allies of World War II. The government relocated to Taiwan from China after losing the 1949 Civil War to the Chinese Communist Party. Beijing now claims the self-ruled island of Taiwan as part of its territory and demands other countries treat it as a Chinese province.
The British Premier League is canceling its $600 million China soccer broadcasting partnership. The league says it didn't get paid. It means soccer fans in China will miss out on the new season, but it'll also leave a big hole in the league's accounts. It's already facing a record pre-tax loss this year. Is it a political move from China? It's hard to tell. Details on the matter are reportedly private. The UK has recently banned Huawei and opposed Beijing's so-called national security law in Hong Kong. The former Chinese license holder, Sunning Holdings, says it's simply a consequence of the pandemic. Chinese education company GSX Tech Edu Incorporated is being investigated by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. That's after it was accused of reporting fake sales. The New York-listed company runs online courses for students from kindergarten through the 12th grade. GSX recently announced a huge revenue surge on a year-over-year basis, a nearly 370% bump to over $240 million in its second quarter net revenues. The company said most of the growth came from early paid course enrollments, nearly 1.5 million of them. But short sellers reported red flags in the company's earning releases on Wednesday. Based on data from Breakout Point, 5 firms soon published multiple reports on GSX. They claim many of the company's users are fake and that it inflated its sales and operations data. GSX shares closed 12% lower on Wednesday. And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.